found us on the MAP, Mental Health and Addiction Podcast. I'm Kimberly Walsh. I'm here with my co-hosts and good friends, the amazing Andy Panda Bernstein. Hi, Andy.
Good morning.
Good morning. And the incomparable Chris Berry Long.
Wow.
Good morning.
Wow.
What exactly does incomparable mean?
There's nobody better.
There's no comparison. There's nobody better.
Nobody better. You're one of a kind.
You're top notch.
I'm going to fall over off my pedestal.
I know. What time's the concert? What time's the Dead show?
Love it.
Oy, oy, oy.
Oy.
So for those of you who are new to our podcast, just a little introduction here. Chris Long has been in the industry for many years, dedicating herself to working with families and helping people get into treatment. Andy has been an advocate for changing the landscape of mental health and addiction. As the producer of Crosscheck Radio with hockey legend Kevin Stevens, and through his own experiences. As for me, I have experience in the recovery industry, and I now own and operate Brady's Landing, which is a sober home for women on the Cape. We put this podcast together because all three of us are very passionate about reducing the stigma around mental health and addiction. We believe that the more light we shed on these topics, the less people will shun, ostracize, and otherwise punish those who suffer from mental illness and addiction. So if you have a question during the show, please post it on our Facebook page, Facebook Live. We'll be monitoring the screen and you'll be able to ask whatever questions of the guest or of us. We welcome that. And please share the link with anyone who might benefit from the information we're providing here, the resources we have. So before we introduce today's guest, we have a great show. We like to check in with one another. So we'll start with Chris. How are you feeling today? How's life treating you, friend?
So yesterday was like a really kind of bad day. Not like I had fun going and looking at puppies, don't get me wrong. But then I got home and I just didn't want to be home. You know, like it was nice to get out and actually get out. And it was like coming home, we're all so like toast. We're done like this. And now that everything's starting to open up, you kind of want to just go. You want to get out. You want to go to the weather's beautiful. You want to go to the beach, you know, but there's still that uncertainty. And I don't know. It's like, I feel like a roller coaster, man. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And some of it I can control and some of it I can't. And then, you know, my evening ended with a phone call from one of my moms. People are still getting their stimulus checks. Their loved one was in a program, and other members that were in the program received their stimulus checks. And this individual walked out with 2 or 3 other individuals that had received their stimulus checks, and nobody has heard from them. And so, you know, I'm angry at our government for the way that they went about this. They didn't think this through. They just said, let's throw $1,500 at everybody that's had a job that doesn't owe child support. And, you know, let's give $600 extra a week to people in unemployment. I know what the encouragement behind that was to say, you know, if we give them enough money, maybe they'll stay home. But there's that population that nobody's talking about. There's the population of people that are suffering from depression, anxiety, substance abuse, mental illness, that don't have that kind of money typically in their bank account. And when it happens, it's opened the floodgates. And, you know, it's very frustrating, and it's made me very angry. Because
how would you combat it though? How would you combat the money?
Yeah, what's the solution?
I don't know. I mean, it's easy to say, you know, yeah, let's just do this and let's not do that. And, you know, I guess I would encourage, and what I've been doing is encouraging loved ones to take those cards that they get from the government that gives them access to this money, if it's not a check, from their loved ones, and help them. But I mean, they're adults, you know, you don't want to micromanage them, but ultimately as a parent of a loved one, we know that when they get $1,000, you know, we know where it's going to go, especially if they're in early recovery. So I don't know. I mean, there probably is no solution to it. It's just frustrating because there's a lot of people that are losing their lives because they're going back out. There are people that have had long-term sobriety that have received this kind of money, and it's just given them the ticket and the excuse to go out and use.
Are there any that haven't gone out and used, that have maybe used the money to put a down payment, like on an apartment, or has there been any good things that have come from it?
Yeah, I mean, there are people that are doing it and using it for the right reason. I'm not, I don't know if it's the majority of them or the minority. Right now, it's, the majority of people that I'm dealing with are people that are in early recovery that are receiving this money. And, there's just not enough. And then you go for meetings and stuff, and, there's no meetings. It's not like they can go and all sit around the table and talk about, hey, I got all this money. What are you doing with it? It's in a Zoom meeting, so there's no support that way. And then if you go into detox, like this is what happens. You go into detox, right? And say you're getting the minimum, which is like $230 a week in unemployment plus the $600. Now you go into detox, you have $800 waiting for you when you come out of detox. $800.
So,
are they a little loud at the beach right now?
Yeah, hold on. Wait a second. Keep talking.
Andy, how are you doing?
I'm good. I am good. I'm starting to get in this reopen mode, and it's definitely cool that we're moving forward. But again, it's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So, it definitely takes a toll on you, because it's like, all right, now I'm hunkered down, but now we're ready to kind of move forward. So it's like I've been institutionalized a little bit home, and now I'm like, all right, now I'm going out again, or starting to go out. And so a lot of emotions there, but it's good. But, it's funny. I was telling you guys, there was actually an article on CNBC today that last Thursday, the UN released a policy on COVID-19 and mental health. And they're basically saying now it's crystal clear that mental health needs to be treated as a core element of our response to the COVID recovery and, in the pandemic. And so that was said by the World Health Organization. But what's interesting is that 40% of the people, that they polled are actually suffering with mental health issues, and that it's been on the upright, the increase.
Sure.
So we're not alone. Nobody's alone with this, because it's an adjustment again.
Right.
What do you guys say?
I agree with you on that. There's definitely, it's definitely going to be, I want to say, what show, but it's good, but we're not doing that. It's going to be difficult because of, like I said last week, the number of overdoses and suicides and mental illness crises are about to surpass the number of COVID deaths. If, it could happen because people are so depressed and they don't have connection, and they're dropping like flies. So we do absolutely have to be prepared for this. And I think they should make it part of COVID, make it part of the COVID reopening and bounce back and healing and all that stuff.
I think it has to be, especially when you have 36 million people unemployed. Right. That because my guess, could be wrong, maybe a quarter of those people get hired back.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think a quarter, and I'll tell you why. Because I hear it in my head. We have to do more with less. The companies would say, it's all hands on deck, right? Unfortunately, with the COVID, we had to lay people off, so we need everybody really to step in and take on more responsibility, because we don't have the money to do it.
You're right, and they don't. Right?
No, but that's that's kind of the my thought process. So I think it's going to be a lean time. That's just my take on it.
Well, I think the other thing too is like, with all this money that people are getting, like in unemployment, if you do the PUA, which is the pandemic unemployment or whatever, I don't know what it stands for. I'm assuming that's what it stands for. You you can't get your taxes taken out. So say we survive all of this, right? And we get these jobs, like, and the jobs aren't what you've been making because the world has changed. You know,
Right.
you're not going to be making that $27 an hour type of job that you might have been working, you know, pre-COVID. Then you're going to get hit with all these taxes for the unemployment that you're going to get, that you're collecting. Like it's
decided that
the
for
ripple
sure,
is,
Chris?
huh?
Have they decided that for sure? They're not going to forgive the tax. You're definitely going to owe it at the end of the.
So I don't know about the extra 600 that you get, but the weekly, I'm assuming you're going to get hit with that. Like, you know, the weekly, like what you get for typical wages, like the 236, I'm assuming you're going to get hit for taxes with that. The 600, they better forgive you, because not everybody's going to say I wanted it. They're just putting it in our bank accounts. I mean, I'm collecting unemployment and I've gone to try to put my taxes on it. And I can't get my taxes. It says on it, you're unable. And it says, they haven't decided what they're going to do about the taxes. Right on it. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, at least you tried.
Yeah, right?
So with Memorial Day coming, changing gears, with Memorial Day coming, and you're down on the Cape, Kimberly, what are you anticipating down there? Are you thinking you're going to get a ton of people down there? I mean, do you see it's
already starting.
Is it?
Yeah, there's actual traffic yesterday. We haven't had traffic in several months. So I definitely think that it's going to, people are just chomping at the bit. They want to get out, and you can see it on the beaches and the cars. And I think it'll be less than, I don't think it'll be as crowded as it would have been, but I think it will still, really think it's going to be okay.
Do you guys see that from your worlds? Do you think that, addiction is going to pick, kind of you see more alcohol and drug abuse now?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Maybe
Absolutely.
People are waiting to go to, like, from where they are. They're waiting to go from where they are to the next stage because they're because of COVID. They're still quarantined. But when that's lifted and they can transfer to, say, even get into treatment or go to sober living from treatment or whatever the transition is, I think that will happen
Right.
all at once.
So we did a good stall, right? We did a good stall because our guest is here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Not that we're stalling, but we were.
No, we did a good fill in. I mean, we could go on forever and talk about a lot of different things,
all kinds of nonsense we could talk about. Just
yeah.
cuckoo stuff.
I was thinking the other day about how.
Can you hear me okay?
You know what? You're the best guest we've ever had. You're crystal clear, and your audio is great.
Check this out.
Oh, look
Nice.
at you! See, you've come...
with little screen and everything.
Yeah, that's my logo back there. I'm getting fancy for you.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it. So we're going to meet Nicole, and Nicole Malloy is our special guest. She is an author. She is a spiritual wellness mentor, and her goal is to help people create a life they love living by overcoming their deeply rooted, highly destructive patterns of self-sabotage. She has written 2 books titled Stop Sabotaging Your Society, or Your Sobriety, and Stop Sabotaging Your Happiness. And so she wrote these 2 books that everyone and anyone can take this beautiful soul transforming journey to building a better life for themselves. I stole that from your website.
Go for it.
Okay. So I'm thrilled that you're on. We're happy to have you. And tell us about.
Here. I'm really excited.
Well, good.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
That's Kimberly and that's Chris.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
So tell us about yourself. Give us a little background about who you are and kind of how'd you end up doing what you're doing today.
Okay. So where do I begin? Okay. So, when I was a young girl, I didn't know it at the time, but I was very intuitive. am very connected to the other side. But when you start out with something at such a young age, you think everybody is like that, and you think it's very normal. And so I would pretty much on a regular basis get some insights to, I would get some messages from my spirit guides or whomever is guiding me on the other side when things would get kind of tough. And I've collected that information through the years. Like, for example, my father growing up, he struggled with addiction and drugs, and it didn't appear that it was a struggle for him. He was very functional, but I knew something was different. But one day he was very angry, and he was yelling in the kitchen, and I started to feel like like kind of a panic. And then all of a sudden I got this intuitive message that said, don't take what your father does or says personally. He doesn't understand how he's hurting people right now, but he will one day. Just don't take it personally. And I was probably around 10 when I got that message. So that allowed me to take a step back from my environment and
understand it for what it was.
Right. Nothing personal.
Right.
And
that's easy. That's great that you learned that at such a young age too.
It saved me a lot of grief. And I realized later in life, when I decided to make a career change, that all these insights that were being fed to me, these types of insights throughout my life, was really, it was like a study of the human condition, but divinely guided. And so I said, wow, this is not what everybody knows. So I'm going to write a book.
Well, my understanding is you worked in marketing.
Yeah.
Prior to, doing what you're doing now, the life coaching, mentoring, authoring, or being an author. I think the marketing and life coaching and understanding people really have the same, there's a direct correlation there. Would you agree?
I got into marketing because I love the psychology of it.
Me too. Yeah.
And it, eventually my soul rejected it. I found myself living in Las Vegas for 10 years, working at the casinos.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to keep trying to make people come here and spend their life savings
right.
on a pipe dream. So I left that environment. But I eventually realized I don't want to make people feel like they need things and stuff to be whole, because they're already whole. So I realized I was kind of working against what I wasn't in alignment with what I believed.
And you weren't happy because of it. I'm going to guess that you felt like you were, not, like you said, not in alignment, because you were doing one thing, but you really felt another thing. So you weren't being true to yourself.
Yeah. I realized a lot, like I said, from a psychology point of view, what makes people want stuff, but then it seemed wrong once I learned.
Wow, Kim, you can relate to that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a part of my story too. With, in long-term recovery, I had everything on the outside. It looked great, but it was just dead on the inside. So
yeah,
I absolutely relate to that.
And that's a lot of people these days.
So you also mentioned, talking to in your bio. See, I did research. In your bio, you talk about hearing the angels.
Mm-hmm. Spirit guides.
Spirit guides.
My spirit guide.
Talk about that.
Sometimes it feels like a knowing. Sometimes it sounds audible. There's been a few times in my life where things have been audible. Like the night I met my husband, it was like, this is the man you're going to marry.
I had the same thing.
Really?
I got back in the golf cart. Yeah.
And,
she's cooking a bagel right now. I got back in the golf cart and I said, I'm going to marry that girl. I met her. She didn't know it at the time, but I got back in the golf cart. I said, I'm going to marry her.
Oh, I didn't say anything. We met in 2005. We didn't get married till 2011. And he ended up getting back together with his ex at the time, the night we met. And I was just fresh out of a relationship. So I was like, I don't even care. It wasn't butterflies. It was more like, the sky is blue. This is the man you're going to marry. But also there's been other times, like one time I was walking down the aisle in I believe it was Walmart, or Target wasn't around yet. This is when I was younger. And I had my head down as I was walking, and I heard, "Don't let that man see you." And I looked up, and there was a man walking towards me very aggressively. And so I jetted down the next aisle, and I watched him, and he was in a huff about something, but like, I didn't even know there was a man in front of me.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
So like, yeah.
But you're attuned to it, so that's what makes it.
And then there's been other times. I could go on and on. I could probably talk for 2 hours about really incredible things that have happened on a spiritual level. Like, one thing, hold on, I have to close this invite. Another part of my story that's really important is when I was raised Roman Catholic, and my grandmother used to take me to this place called La Salette in Attleboro, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
They have beautiful.
I'm from Foxboro.
What?
I'm from Foxboro.
Oh, okay. That's cool. My mom grew up in that area.
Yeah.
And so around the age of 13, I believe it was, anywhere from 10 to 13, we spent the day in the gardens, and then we were walking back to my grandmother's car, and she saw a nun that she was friendly with. And so I let them talk. I remember being short and looking up at them. And so I really wasn't paying too much attention to their conversation. But then all of a sudden, the nun said, "I died, and I went to heaven, and I saw it, and it was beautiful. And it was the most, it was the most loving, beautiful experience I've ever had." And that caught my ear and my attention. And I looked up at her and I said, "You died?" And she said, "Yes." She looked me right in the eyes, and I could still feel her and see her looking at me all these years later saying, "Yes, I died. And I went to heaven, but I was told it wasn't my time, and I had to go back. So I just have to be patient." So that I didn't know it at the time, but that really planted a seed in my head, that it was okay to believe in near-death experiences. This is really before anyone was talking about this stuff. And so that night, we stayed at my grandmother's house, and my mom tucked me into bed. This is how young I was. My mom was tucking me into bed, but I didn't want to go to sleep. So after she left the room, I walked to the window, and I was looking out the window, and I heard another message say, "You can do anything you want to do in this lifetime." And I intuitively knew it meant career-wise. So I've never been afraid to, like,
I love that.
you can
I'm
do
sorry.
anything. The reality that we live is being created by us in the moment. It's not pre-planned or predestined, you know?
I have to interject because it's something I've been like focused on this week. I was watching the last dance of the Chicago Bulls, and Michael Jordan was talking about winning and how he was so intense. And he's like, "Look, if you want to win, you want to be a part of my journey, you got to get on board." All right. And basically he was intense. Right. And like, for me, I realized, I was like, I don't have to apologize.
Mm-hmm, no. And we kind of feel, a lot of people are afraid to shine. And
Right.
but we're born with something that God needs us to contribute to this world. Each and every one of us has something. And if we don't get to a place within ourselves where we start bringing that to the world, then we're not living up to our agreement that we agreed with on the other side with God before we were even born. But that's another conversation for probably later.
Another day.
So tell us about your book.
Yeah.
I want to hear about because we're going to run out of time, and we're not going to
touch
on that book.
So yes, it's called Stop Sabotaging Your Sobriety and Create a Life You Love. And overall, it talks about how we have two parts of us, human and soul. Our human self is all up here in our heads, and it's driven by ego. And when people hear the word ego, they think, an obnoxious person. But by ego, I mean the part of you that's afraid, the part of you that's always trying to keep you safe and therefore still and stuck. It's like your ego is often like a bad friend who gives you terrible advice.
Eddie Haskell.
She's too young for Eddie Haskell.
No, I remember.
Okay.
But your soul, which is, it's your divine compass, and that's what that logo is. It's a compass, but it's also a mandala with the heart in the middle, because once you connect to God or the higher power or the creator, whatever you want to call it, that creator energy, which is all the same no matter what you call it, then your compass stops being offline and crazy, and you start to the direction and the decisions you make start to take you in a direction that you're supposed to go in. But in order for that to happen, you need to understand the divine virtues and the mindful modalities, which I talk about in my book. So basically, it's like with the mindful modalities, I try to teach people how to be smarter than their own minds, because that's the part that sabotages us. And then I talk about the divine virtues, which is kind of like realigns your moral compass, so that when you're making decisions, you're like, am I making this decision being humble? Am I being simple? Am I working in faith? Am I working out of revenge, or have I forgiven? That kind of stuff. So I talk about that in the book. And also I talk about how to use your physical body to alert your higher self, once you align those two parts of yourself, how to pay attention to your physical body to know when a relapse might be coming on. So many people ignore the pain in their gut, or their backache, or their neck ache, or that sour stomach feeling. Like, I'll know, I check in with myself on such a regular basis that if I have if my heart feels like it's a little bit thumping too fast, or if my stomach hurts, I'll be like, did I just have a conversation with someone that bothered me? Or did I just have, sometimes we talk to ourselves. Did something I just think of trigger a yucky emotion? And if you don't work back to the root of what just triggered that feeling, those things start to pile up, and they'll bite you in the butt in the form of like, I'll just have one drink, I'll just have one whatever. And so in the book, I try to tell people about how to use your whole being to help with recovery, or just creating a beautiful life for yourself. And the book isn't necessarily something just for people who struggle with addiction. Like before the pandemic happened, I was turning it into a second book for anyone who wants to read it. But then I had to switch gears, and I created an online course. And so I'll get back to the second book soon.
Why did you choose addiction? I mean, like what like
a lot of people,
a lot of people ask me that, and it was totally driven by God. I have
that's a
I can relate.
We do a lot of work with that here at Brady's. Like, we do the full getting in touch with your body and the physical aspects, and how to know that that's a part of where your mind goes wrong when you start down that path to go on autopilot.
Yep.
And possibly begin the relapse. And it's so subtle, but I love
right.
Yeah.
It's very subtle, but the more time you give to your soul to try to build that part of you, your intuition grows. Like, you become more sensitive to those emotions, because the goal is to live in kind of stillness. Everyone thinks happiness is running around skipping all the time, but happiness is really just being able to be still in a moment and not having your mind take over your being,
So absolutely sideswipe you and take over.
Yeah. A lot of people, when I wrote the book, some people are like, what right do you have to write this book? You've never struggled. But I come from a family of more than just my dad who has struggled. And I've had these intuitive insights since I was a little kid. So why not help people who need it, maybe not the most, but, who really need it. Can I say one more thing? I don't want
to. Yeah, keep going. No, yeah. Absolutely.
All right. I got this divine message that pushed me to write the book. And it was that okay, how much time do I have?
You're good.
You're fine.
You're good.
Okay. So I just want to say this. When we die and we go to the other side, first off, the process of leaving this rental, which is like a rental car, our bodies are like rental cars, everyone says that when they rise up out of their body and they look down, they are not at all attached to their physical body. They're like, oh, I'm dead.
Right.
And then the light usually comes. There's variations of it, but usually the light comes and it's overwhelming, right? Overwhelming with joy and love and just healing all the parts of you. But when we get to the other side, there's typically a life review. I've studied so many near-death experiences because of what happened to me with that nun when I was a kid. And I believe that God started giving a lot of people these near-death experiences because so many people have stepped away from organized religion and they have no guidance in that spiritual department anymore. And therefore, depression and anxiety and suicide and addiction is skyrocketing because of that. So I feel like God really wants these stories of near-death knowledge gained on the other side to be shared. So anyways, the most important question you'll ever be asked in your lifetime is, did your soul learn the lessons it set out to learn when you were born? And if you can answer yes, great, cool. Go on vacation for a little bit, relax. But in your next lifetime, that conflicts with Christianity, I know, but like a lot of people who have had near-death experiences are saying, yes, we reincarnate until our souls reach the level of wisdom it needs to we need to reach.
That's awesome.
Now listen to this. This is so powerful. So if your soul did not learn the wisdom it set out to learn in this lifetime, you have to do it again in your next lifetime, plus your next set of lessons. So I got this message that said, so many people are not reaching their potential and not learning their lessons because of this disconnect from spirituality. But I feel, having all this information, I feel that, it's also thought that we choose our hardships based on the lessons our soul needs to learn to grow and evolve. So,
and it keeps staying there until you learn it.
Yes, but the thing is, we choose our hardships. So I feel that a person's soul might purposefully choose to live the life of an addict in this lifetime, because if a soul didn't learn these lessons, they can pile up. But I feel like addiction is an experience that someone can get a multitude of lessons out of the way in one lifetime and just be done with them if they can do it. And your soul wouldn't have signed up for it in the first place if it didn't know that you could do it. So is that making sense?
I love that.
That's deep. That's very deep.
That's awesome.
So the thing is, life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And you are in it because God, your spirit guides, and your soul knows that you can do it.
So are there times,
I love that.
I have to jump in. Okay, so are there times in your life, and I'll ask this to all you guys, are there times in your life where you say, I'm going to ignore this stuff, right? And I'm going to force a situation because I think that I'm supposed to have this. And when you do that, you end up really making a mistake because you're not listening to things. Have you experienced this?
You mean trying to like force something, whatever that might be, in your life?
Either ignoring or not hearing the messages that you're supposed to get.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot more. Now I'm kind of just like, I ride the wave. I'm like, tell me where we're going.
Right.
For example, the prime example of what you're talking about is how this book came to be. So before I wrote this book, I started a charitable coffee company called We the People Coffee, and donated to nonprofits. But it cost a lot of money to run, and I ran out of money. I had to shut it down. But in the back of the book, I tell this story too. But so I was praying to God. I'm like, what do you want me to do? I had this experience that I can't really get into because it'll take too much time, but it's in the book, where I had this like kind of, it's called a Kundalini awakening. It's when your whole body like gets really like hot and like your soul is like feels on fire. It was amazing. It's in the book. But anyways, I kept getting this vision of a compass and guiding people. And this was the message I was getting, guiding people, compass. And so as soon as I was getting a massage, I was laying on my stomach getting a massage at the time. And usually I'm really good at shutting things out and just enjoying a massage, because it's a treat,
Sure.
this time I could not shut it off. And I went for a walk after the massage to calm down.
Right.
So then I went home. I called my graphic designer. I'm like, please design me something. She designed that. It was perfect. About 6 months later, I was praying to God. I'm like, what do you want me to do? I need answers. And so a few weeks later, I was scrolling through Instagram. I got this advertisement served for a book writing course, and for, what is it, heart-centered entrepreneurs who want to turn their practice into coaching and helping people. I'm like, well, that's perfect. So I applied, and there were 4 video interviews. And at the end of the 3rd interview, they said, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to tell you how much it's going to cost to write your book and take this training. And I was like, okay. And they're like, and by the 4th call, you have to have the money to pay for it on the call. And they're like, I know that sounds salesy, but it's because most people will never come back.
Like they'll become flakes, and they'll
talk themselves out of it, out of fear, out of the ego and everything. So I'm like, I get it. Okay. So I went through the series of interviews, and at the end of the 3rd call, they're like, it's going to cost $14,000 to write your book. I was like, what? Because the thing with the book is I had tried to write it for a year and it wasn't working. Like in the beginning, I was flaky about it, but then I really tried and I just couldn't understand the process to writing a book. So this person guaranteed that you would have a book written in 3 months. I'm like, that's what I want.
Right.
And I was just like, I don't have $14,000. I spent it all on the program, on the business I was running before this. So I said a prayer to God, and I was crying because I knew this was my path. A psychic had actually told me before, I see you being a published author in your lifetime. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, God, this is an example of what you were just talking about. If this is what you want me to do, you have to have $14,000 fine me in 2 days. It's time for my next call. And I just like, I literally 100% let it go, like turned over my entire troubles to God. And I went downstairs and I was talking to my husband, and my aunt texted me and she said, do you want Kevin's little rocking chair for your daughter? Kevin is her son who passed away. Drunk driving, motorcycle accident. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And she's like, let's meet at Panera tomorrow. I was like, okay, great. She walked into us at the cafe. She was wearing a Compass shirt and Compass earrings.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, I didn't bring up the money or anything because I didn't want to owe family money anymore. I had let it go that much because I owed some money from the last company. And we were talking about family and what I wanted to do with my life. And she said, you should write a book. And I was like, okay.
You should say that.
Right. I'll take that as a sign that I'm supposed to at least bring it up. So I brought up the course and I told her how much it cost. And I changed the subject back to family. When we finished our coffees, we went to the car and she said, what if I ask your uncle if we can loan you the money? I didn't even ask for it. So it's kind of in line with what you were saying, like we can try to force things, but it only really works if we turn it ourselves and what's supposed to be over to God completely. Because if we try to resist too much, we cause ourselves undue stress because what's supposed to be will be. And,
yes.
And you're almost becoming like a roadblock to God's, path for you.
Yeah.
It's too hard.
Yeah.
So funny you should say 14,000. That's just such a trip, because part of my story is when I was trying to get this house for the sober living is that that's what they told me. The escrow is going to be $14,000. And I was like, I don't have $14,000. What are you talking about? Where there was 2 hours left and time to sign the papers. And we were in escrow and I had to come up with $14,000. So I was just running around from different bank to different bank, and it's down to the wire. And so I went into Citizens and I had an old bank account and I was like, maybe I can, wire this money from here. I was just trying to figure it out. And they were like, no, it's not going to happen. So I went into the branch and I said, please help me. I'm crying. I don't know what to do. Escrow's not going to go through. And she goes, Miss Walsh, have you checked your account here? And I said, no, there's nothing in this account. I haven't looked at it for 2 years. And she turns the screen around and there's not 15,000, not 13,000, but there's $14,000 in my bank account. And I was like, what? I was absolutely floored. And then I just got goosebumps because
I did too. It's because you're supposed to be doing this work, because God needs everyone who's struggling with addiction. God needs them to step up to the plate. God needs them to work through these issues because their soul needs to advance. Like I was saying, because once your soul advances past all these things, then you can step into another version of your higher self and contribute.
Like a video game. Like a video game. You get Master 1 board.
Oh.
But you can start to contribute your talents and your gifts and your interests, and you can give to your community. And you know, a lot of times your struggle was there to help others too. And because you can support people through it. But I honestly feel that addiction is a person's opportunity to get a series of lessons completely out of the way in one lifetime and start fresh. And I also want to say something about suicide or overdose. A lot of people are wondering what happens. So the people who commit suicide do not go to hell. People who overdose do not go to hell. But they do have to repeat their lessons over in a later lifetime, which, you know, could be several human years away. There's no such thing as time on the other side. But so before you give up complete hope, ask yourself, do you really want to do this again? Do you really want to come this far just to stop now? No. You spent too much time battling. You have to win this. You just have to. And you can, because your soul wouldn't have signed up for it if you couldn't.
It doesn't go away, right? It doesn't go away, even in this lifetime. I mean, you've got to walk. The only way out is through, you know?
Yeah.
So I just want to share a quick story. So when I first moved to Foxboro, I didn't really come with a whole lot of, I grew up in a religious background, but I didn't come I just wasn't doing the church thing. And my neighbors were very churchy people. And I went to their church. I loved it. And I decided that I wanted to accept Christ. So, you know, I'm sitting in the pastor's office and I said, all right, so what does this involve? What do I have to do? Can I still drink? You know, I'm not an addict, but can I still have a beer? You know, can I swear? All these things. I thought I had to do this different life. Yeah. And he just laughed and he's like, no, you can be you and do the things that you need to do, so on and so forth. So I did it and I accepted Christ and became a born again and all that fun stuff. So I get into my car and I had the radio on Kiss 108 and I turned the radio on and on Eagles Way came on the radio, which is Kiss 108.
I love the Eagles.
Right. Well, it's a song. I don't think it's by the Eagles, is it?
Right. On Eagles' Wings, I think.
On Eagles' Wings. You know, it's God, whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is
on Eagles.
Eagles, yeah, you got it.
So I was like, okay, that's crazy, whatever. And I always felt like my messages from God would come through music. You know, music is how I communicate. When I pray, it's I look for music and messages through music. The other way I do it, and I know this is crazy, but so my kids, my older two kids are in recovery now, but we went through many years of suffering and struggling. I had 3 other children, you know, it was awful. And I finally got to the point where I allowed myself to turn myself over to allow God to show me the way to help my kids best, as well as education. But I used to flip a coin and I'd be like, all right, this is it. One flip. You know, I'm like, if it's heads, whatever, tails, whatever, but I would always flip the coin and I'd always ask God, be like, tell me what I'm supposed to do. And it was really hard to entrust. I know it sounds crazy, but so I'd flip the coin. And if it was heads, and I'd stick to it. And it always turned out okay, which made me flip the coin the next time and flip the coin the next time. And to this day, if I am at crossroads with a decision, because I don't know, I'm getting pulled in different directions, I flip the coin and, you know, I pray on it, but I flip the coin. So it's definitely about higher power and such.
One thing I notice about flipping a coin that I do is like when it's spinning in the air, like if it's a question like of, you know, importance, while it's spinning in the air, what are you hoping for?
Right.
That too. Also, I do want to say I've been getting some messages lately about the importance of being still. And a lot of people call it meditating. Meditating kind of scares people away, like, oh, I can't meditate, I can't sit still for 20 minutes or whatever. But it's more about the longer you can sit still and just kind of be in this quietness where you're not your mind and you're more your soul. You can, before you begin your meditation, you can ask a question and be like, please provide me with the answers I need. And one thing that I've learned is like, that's how I get my information quite often, is if I'm just still. And the more you do it, you actually can take that with you into your daily life, and you don't need to sit in a quiet room with a candle lit. You know what I mean? It's almost like you can close your eyes anywhere and you start getting really intuitive. But what I do is when I'm alone and I close my eyes, I try to, like, I visualize a triangle right here in my head, and I try to keep my thoughts in this tiny little area, because otherwise they just, my thoughts go like, what's for dinner, and all that stuff. But if you can try to stay centered right here, and just know that this part of your mind in that little safe triangle spot is nothing but quiet and love and peace, and that's your safe spot. Like, I feel like that's when you can meditation starts to become real. I don't know if that helps.
Is there a correlation to your third eye there?
Yeah, it's kind of like the area of the third eye. It's the refuge from the noise of the human mind.
Okay, so with the COVID right now,
The cove.
the cove. With that, what do you sense, right? What does your spirit tell you? What's going to be now that we're reopening, and what do you feel?
Well, I actually made some notes because I was kind of hoping or thinking you'd ask that.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay, so each one of us, your soul, my soul, your soul, your soul, everyone on this planet, we're all a particle. We're all a part of the greater whole of God. We come from God, and God is nothing but unconditional love, and He is energy. Therefore, we are energy. So that's why when we pray, there's actual responses that we get, whether that be through, listening to music or flipping a coin or praying, whatever it is. That's why we get answers, because when we send our energy out, we're going to get it back, as long as we're connecting with God or the creator energy. So I feel, and God works through people. God just isn't a magician and sprinkles fairy dust. He just, I believe that the story for mankind is a mix between things that are supposed to happen and free will. Okay. Someone's near-death experience once said that they were shown that they could choose their life based on how it would make them feel, and they reached into this void and took away things that they just didn't want to experience in their life, and then free will shifted the reality. So it gets really deep.
No, it's great. Okay, keep going.
So anyways, because we are all energy, I feel like there was a collective cry for help. Like, we have strayed so far from who we are. We've let consumerism and vanity and everything just take us over, and we have no grounding anymore, and we need help. Whether that cry was unconscious or conscious, we were still all setting it out there, whether, addiction as well, cry for help. To the source from which we came. And I believe He answered in such a way that we were all sent to our rooms for 2 months to sit by ourselves, and whatever whatever each person's unique experience is exactly what it was supposed to be. I believe that the people who have died from COVID so far, before they were even born, they agreed to play that role. I know that that's crazy, but the world wouldn't have shut down if people hadn't died. It wouldn't have created this opportunity for people to heal. So I feel like the people who have died from COVID are actually unsung heroes that will never get a thank you, because people don't think this way normally. But I am incredibly grateful for that sacrifice that they've made to create this opportunity. There are some Native American prophecies that say that mental health will be our main focus over the next decade or so, and that our mental health is going to improve tremendously because of it. And what's going to bring that on? COVID, right? We're being forced to look within. We're being forced to reach our wits' end. We're being forced to make changes that we wouldn't make normally. So I really feel like, as scary as things can get if you listen to the media too much, which I do not suggest.
Yeah, I do that. Bad.
Because you don't know what's motivating those people. Anyways, that's another discussion.
I love it.
I'm with you on that one, Nicole. I'm with you on that one, 100%.
Yeah.
Good. But you were saying, you guys were chatting before I came on, you were talking about doing more with less, and you were talking about how mental health, and I feel like mental health will improve simply because it has to. And when you were saying we have to do more with less, as far as healing goes, mental and spiritual healing, I listened to a woman's near-death experience, which is it was beautiful. It was an hour long. She said that she was told by the creator that we need to become more inspired by Native Americans, and my jaw almost dropped when she said this, because once COVID really started coming in, I was being drawn to Native things. And then maybe a month into the pandemic, I watched this woman's NDE, and I was like, I knew that. And so, like you said, Chris, you hear things through music, and sometimes I'll find synchronicities in people's near-death experiences or whatever the case may be. And the signs are everywhere. You just have to learn to listen to them. But so we need to be inspired by the Native Americans, and they honored the earth. And there's there's energy in the earth that is healing. Like if you put your hands and your feet on the earth, you'll begin to heal, because your soul will connect with the energy that's in the soil, in the trees, in the grass, because God made that too. So I highly suggest that people start gardening. I know that sounds crazy, but whether it's a planter or not, just get your hands in the soil and create something. It will help spur healing.
That's so weird. One of my my buddies who is in recovery, and he struggles with mental health issues, and I had been worried about him, so I'd call him and check in on him, and he checks in on me, and I hadn't heard him from for a couple of days, maybe a week, and I said, "How are you?" And he said, "I started a garden."
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I said, "Well, what are you growing?" It's like cucumbers and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Good for you!" Like, because I was worried about him.
Mm-hmm.
And you just mentioned garden. He actually started a garden. He's probably the last person I thought would start a garden.
And
yeah, that's awesome. We do a garden here too for the girls. We've got a garden. We had a zucchini, and they dig in the dirt, because I know that's where the good energy is, and it's
He's a big guy though, like a big guy, type of like guy.
Size doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying he wouldn't be. It's not just a woman who can. It's like here's a guy who just started doing that. To start helping his mental health through.
When I am, the other day I spent the entire day with my hands in the soil. My phone was in the house, and I feel like when you're working in the garden, you're almost in a meditative state that I was talking about. You're in this zone where you're not really thinking too much about other things, and that's so healthy for your head. And another thing that gardening can lead to is a closer community. Once things open up a little bit more, we can get back into farmers markets. Like naturally, we are hardwired to live in tribes or villages that are small, and we've kind of gotten to a place in the world today where we can do everything quickly on our phone, like super fast, don't need to interact with anyone, and therefore we feel like other people don't need us as well. And so if we can take those vegetables and bring them to a farmer's market or give them to our neighbors, it kind of like starts this whole organic way of living again. And I feel like we need to get back to basics. And that's another thing, if I may add, when I was in 6th or 8th grade, I was at PCIS in Plymouth. And I can't remember which grade it was because I went to Sacred Heart in 7th grade. But I remember giving a presentation, standing up in the classroom saying, in our lifetime, we are all going to have to go back to basics and learn how to grow our own food again. And I looked at my teacher like, right? Expecting her to be like, yeah. And she was like,
you know, I think what's kind of weird, and I've been thinking about a lot of this, like we had early in this pandemic, we had talked about like the isolation and how the similarities of during Holocaust, how people were isolating. Obviously, you know, we're not to that extent. We weren't hiding from people, but we were hiding from the pandemic, basically. Right. But then you also think about, and I just completely lost my train of thought. Y2K. Everybody went crazy for Y2K. You know, there's stockpiling, and the world didn't end. I mean, there were people that thought that Y2K, the world was going to end. And you know, I think that God obviously is doing things for a reason, and maybe he did this to slow everybody down. I mean, we're on that fast lane, and life is zooming by, and we're not
living it.
No, we're not enjoying what we have.
No,
things a race.
Yeah. You know? Where are we racing to? Because 6 feet under is the end.
I know.
And you can't take it with you either.
Can't take it with you, right?
It's a human soul's nature to create. So I think we were bound to get here at some point. Grow, you know, start a business, grow it, and then it becomes these big corporations and stuff. But I feel like it's reached a point where it's unhealthy. It's killing the planet. It's killing
people.
Like, there's nothing healthy about where we just were. And I feel like as traumatic and chaotic as it seems, it's supposed to be this way. There was this one man who had a near-death experience. He was a pilot and he was landing his plane. I think he was in the Air Force. He must have been, right? And he said something happened and the plane crashed, and he felt his soul come out of his body, and he was looking around and everything was in slow motion. He saw the plane's propeller. Like, he said it was like he saw the propeller flying through the air. He saw people on the sideline. Like, so he's in the human world, what everyone was watching was very chaotic and very scary. But he said he knew in that moment, well, where everything was falling apart, that everything was happening exactly as it should be. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. So no matter how chaotic things seem, like, you really just have to turn your faith over to God 100% and be like, I trust you. And, you know, even if the worst happens and we end up dying, like, from what I understand, that's the most beautiful experience in our life, is the transfer back to where we come from, where everything is just perfect. And God doesn't judge us. We actually judge our own lifetimes. We view our life and our actions and our words through the eyes of the people who we, you know, made laugh or made cry, or in
surround ourselves with.
God's
all
just
about yeah. So tell us, Nicole, where can we get your book? Where can people find you?
Good question. So it's for sale on Amazon.com for $14.99, but I also have 400 copies in my basement right now.
I want one.
I want one too.
Me too.
So I'm trying to figure out a way to create a web page where people can pay whatever they want for it. I originally was giving it away for free, but everyone's like, I just want to pay something for it.
Yeah, I'll buy it, but I definitely want one.
Cool. Yeah.
I'm not looking for a media copy. I'm just I'm kidding.
No, I mean, if somebody genuinely can't afford it, I will pay for shipping, but I need at least $5 for shipping. But so if people want a copy of the book, just email me at hello@NicoleMalloy.com. So that's
awesome.
NicoleMalloy.com, and just put book in the subject line, and I'll get your address and I'll send you however many copies you want, and you could pay whatever you want. I have Venmo, I have PayPal.
Awesome. And we'll put it on our page too.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I've also created a free masterclass for people who might want to do that. It's like a series of 5 videos that I send to people via email. That's on my website. If you go to NicoleMalloy.com and scroll down a bit, you'll see my blogs, and it's on there. And if it's not on there, just click on the blog area on the top.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been so enlightening. I love it. Really, really loved it.
I could talk for hours.
Will you come back? Will you come back again?
I'd love to.
Okay. All right.
Because we could listen for hours. It's just a great, amazing stories. I love it.
Sometimes I'm at home by myself and I'm like, I want to talk to somebody about it.
Love it.
You say it. That's great. That's great. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Guys, did you have any other questions for Nicole?
No, but Chris is going to tell us where you can connect with us.
Oh, you can find us on Facebook, The Map. It actually comes up Map, but it is The Map.
Okay.
We are, what is it?
What is what?
The links.
So we got the Gmail, the Map Podcast 20 at Gmail, right?
No, the Instagram, but no. What are the links that we can hear the show on?
Oh, fcatv.org/live.
Yeah.
As well as on our page on Map Facebook page.
Okay. Maybe I'll shoot you a message and you can send me those links.
Will do.
That'd be great.
I also want to let people know that I'm working on a course called Cultivating a Mindful Heart. And you know how I talked about aligning your head and your heart together with the virtues and the modalities. If people really want to deep dive and do the introspective work, I'm developing a program that will help people to really get into it.
That's
I love
great.
it.
That's great. Love to hear more about that too. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Have a great long weekend.
Thanks, Nicole.
You too. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
And thank you, all of you, for your support of our mission. And we won't have a show on Friday, just letting you know. We're taking the day off. No, there's just
sabbatical.
Don't forget to follow us and like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram at the Map Podcast 20. And so we will see you all again on Wednesday, the 27th. You've been listening to The Map. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a nice weekend.